In a world where Star Wars is as polarizing as it has ever been, arguments over what Star Wars media out in the universe is good or not rage over every movie, show, book, and game. While Disney churns out products like they're trying to be the next Pokemon, the franchise has a few hits and many more misses. Respawn stepped up to the plate and delivered some light in the sea of darkness with their first entry, Jedi Fallen Order. With incredible acting, cool set pieces, and a solid story, it was my favorite piece of Star Wars media since Return of the Jedi. Which is my favorite, and no, you can't convince me I'm wrong, and I don't care why you think Empire Strikes Back is better, you're wrong. With the return to the Star Wars galaxy in Jedi Survivor, Respawn was seemingly pushed beyond their capability, and at launch, the title was rife with bugs and glitches, plagued with unstable frame rate and crashes, etc. However, if you did not play the game at launch and are still looking to possibly play it now, you are in for something incredibly special.
Thanks, bud. Part of the job, Custis.
Jedi Survivor is a game with a fun and fascinating combat sandbox, top-of-the-line graphics and sound design, and I really mean that one. The sound design for Star Wars has always been good, but these Respawn games are something else. Really, really good stuff. But the game hosts engaging characters, and for the most part, an emotionally charged story that honestly took me completely by surprise. By that, I don't mean that the twists and turns in the story were total shockers, but rather that I found myself far more emotionally connected and involved and attached to these characters and the story than I would have thought previously. When I tell you that Survivor had at least 3 distinct moments that rival the top moments in gaming ever for me, I promise you that is not hyperbole. They were that cinematic, that emotional, that awesome, that cool, that fun, they were awesome. I literally stopped playing the game to get up and go talk to my non-gaming family about it because I just needed to tell somebody how cool this thing that just happened was. I would gush about it to you guys, but I just don't want to spoil anything. But man, what a game.
The Jedi is a threat.
Not now that we have this.
As long as we fight.
As you can probably tell already, I'm about to lavish a lot of praise on Jedi Survivor. So let me hit on the few things that I didn't like so I don't sound like a total shill. One of the first issues I had with Jedi Survivor pops up almost immediately. And it is about how hard it can be to know what the heck you're supposed to do or where to go. I don't mind not having like markers and stuff to tell you exactly your next steps. I kind of like some of that, puzzle in the traversal and figuring that stuff out. That's pretty fun to me. But the markings in Survivor are a bit obtuse. The way they signal you to the walls that you can run on or jump up or slide down or whatever, they can be ridiculously hard to see. They have scratches in them or lines that go a certain direction. And while it's certainly true that in certain environments they are super easy to see, and you won't ever have that problem, in areas where it's dirty or muddy or grungy and whatever, they can kind of disappear into the landscape. And you'll be looking around forever, and then finally you figure it out one way or another, and you're like, I still can barely tell that they're there. It can be really frustrating. It's fine when you need a little bit of searching to kind of figure out where you're going. But when it grinds your progress to a screeching halt, it can be really, really infuriating. The other area that was frustrating to me was in the combat. Now, to be clear, I really enjoyed the combat in Jedi Survivor. The offshoot kind of Soul-esque combat that Jedi Survivor supplies is pretty good and really fun. It's challenging but fair, kind of like that subgenre is known for, and it's really here. Mostly, I think that Survivor nails that. That said, when you fight against groups in Survivor, it can often feel unbalanced or even unfair. With laser shots, unblockable attacks, block meters that seem to fill right back up the second you get it down, which we'll talk about that later. It can easily feel like you are endlessly dodging and getting hit by lasers only to finally try to block one and then immediately get hit by an unblockable attack to then dodge, hit by lasers, block a laser, hit by over and over again. And you, with no time to get a good force power or get an attack in yourself, it can be super annoying and frustrating. Part of the reason the combat can be like that is to push you to experiment and use the combat sandbox that they've provided. But even knowing that, it doesn't always negate the frustration that you go through when fighting those groups. Before we move on to what I really did enjoy in Jedi Survivor, I want to note on the performance. As I mentioned at the top of the review, Jedi Survivor released in an unacceptable state. Many reviewers said that they loved the game for what it offered, but couldn't recommend it because of the despicable piss-poor performance, at least at launch. If you play the game now, it is a very different story, at least on console. I have heard that the PC port is still absolutely repulsive in terms of performance, but I can't speak to that myself as I played it on the PS5. I did have a few pop-ins, a few minor bugs and glitches and stuff like that, but nothing major and definitely nothing that would hamper my experience with it. All right, are you ready? I'm ready. Let's talk about the good stuff. First up, let's go back into the combat and talk about all the things that are really fun. After Fallen Order, which I thought already had a pretty good combat system, here, with the addition of stances, a way better enemy variety, and interesting use of skill trees, the combat is a huge step up. There are several stances in Survivor, which you unlock as you go through the story. I played around with all of them, and the game definitely makes it easy for you to do that, as the points that you put into each of those skill trees don't affect damage or base stats or anything of each weapon, and for a small fee, you can reset those skills and redo them, so you don't lose too much. For me at least, by the end of the game, I reverted back to the single lightsaber, as it was just so much tighter in its combos and patterns. Don't get me wrong, I love dual blades and enjoy them in almost every game, but here the combos are a little too long, and it's difficult to get out of if you need to dodge or something. The double-bladed saber is really nice in groups of enemies or with lots of laser blasts, but it is really rough for one-on-one. There is one stance that you get maybe a third of the way through the game or so, and it's really, really fun, and I'm excited for you to try it, but I'm not going to show it to you here. Stances aside, combat is just fun, especially boss battles. One-on-one is where this game really shines. Learning the enemy movesets so that you don't lock yourself into a long combo when there isn't really time. Now, this is one thing that I've kind of hinted at, but to put it bluntly, Jedi Survivor's dodge does not cancel out your stacked attack inputs. So if you mash the attack button trying to get in a combo, but then see that they're about to do an unblockable attack, you're kind of SOL. there's just not really anything you can do. You'll be there just swinging your lightsaber as they throw a fridge at your face from the other side. It's a little bit frustrating, but I don't necessarily think it's wrong or bad. It's just something you do need to get used to and actually go in for a single or just 2 attacks and not do the full combo. But that can take some getting used to. Now, you also managing both their block meter and your own, and that is a huge part of the combat here. I mentioned this earlier, but the enemy block meter is something you will focus on a lot of the time, because as you destroy their block gauge, it allows you to just dump damage. Unfortunately, the enemies often will finally have their block meter broken, only for you to maybe get a hit in or two, and then it's right back up to full again. This is mostly with kind of like the upper level basic enemies and not so much with the bosses, but it's still brutal. It's because it'll often be when you're in a huge group and you're breaking down meters and attacking all of them while trying to block and dodge, and you finally break down a meter and then it's back up right away. And you're like, come on, I didn't even get a hit in there. So it's a little annoying, but it is something you will be watching and paying attention to all game long. I don't really mind that it refills, and I don't mind needing to break their defenses to begin with. But when I do that work and break their armor or whatever, and it immediately refills, that's super frustrating. So I do wish that they would kind of tone that back a little bit. But outside of that, it's actually a really fun mechanic. Now, utilizing force powers and slowdown is something that I underused a lot of the game, especially the first probably half to 3/4. And that might explain where some of my frustration comes from, because as you use those more efficiently and effectively, then it will help with a lot of that. Tactfully using your force powers makes a huge difference when fighting, especially with the mobs. With powers that enable you to pull a bunch of enemies together or push the whole bunch of them away, some that let you throw them in the air and others that let you smash them down, slowdown power that puts you at not quite normal speed but faster and all of them in slow-mo, well, at least until you hit them, and what came to be my favorite power, which was mind control. As you put points into the different skill trees for these force powers, you will unlock kind of extra utility, whether pulling more than one guy at a time, pushing more than one at a time, pushing or pulling bigger enemies and more powerful enemies, all that kind of stuff. But the mind control, it will eventually allow you to make even the toughest opponent fight for you as an ally, at least for a little while. And that in particular makes things way easier in those group fights. When you can mind control one of the more powerful enemies, or maybe just the far off enemy that's shooting at you the whole time, and they now shoot at your enemies instead, it changes the fight completely. Definitely recommend, if you're having a hard time, reset your skill points and pour into that, and then use it and make enemies fight for you, and you'll notice a huge difference. Now, all of this is what makes combat so incredibly fun in Jedi Survivor. Like I mentioned before, sometimes fighting groups of enemies can be frustrating, but it also can feel really stinking good when you do something like wipe out a whole group. Like pulling them all into the middle and doing a huge attack that takes them all out. Or when you're in the flow and you break someone's guard, then reflect a laser back, turn and finish off the guy, then block, throw a rocket back, and then push someone over the edge. Man, it feels awesome. Nailing a timed block or dodge and getting the immediate feedback, plus their block meter, which just plummets when you time it just right, and then opening up that window for you to just rain down blows and decimate their health. That's one of the most rewarding aspects of this combat. It's really, really good. I'm sure there will be a group of people who won't enjoy the difficulty or can't get past the frustration when they fight groups, but for those who can, this is a heck of a combat system to dive into. The skill trees here offer a lot of variety, where the survival and force trees feel like they really changed up how you play, really change up how you play the game and how powerful you feel. The stance trees serve to kind of open up possibilities for whichever stance you're using. You are able to use one skill point, as I said before, to kind of reset all of those skills and change where you put them. So it's not bad to experiment and try things out. But I felt like the stance trees were kind of pointless. Like, at the end of the game, when I switched back to the single blade after playing with other stances for a while, I didn't even bother to reset the skills. I just finished the game without putting any points into the skill tree of the single lightsaber. I don't know how useful they are. They do add some moves and some different things, but I just never felt like they were that impactful, at least to me. But again, that could be something that I was really missing and maybe should have paid more attention to, but I just didn't. There's also a perk system in Jedi Survivor, and essentially you at a certain point will earn these perks, and they're almost more like another piece of armor, right? You have a certain amount of slots that you can put them into, and then different badges fit different amounts for those slots, and you can do things like have faster regen, or you have a stronger block meter, or you do more damage to the enemy's block meter. Those block meter ones are the ones that I typically held on to. I kept it for me where that my block meter would last longer, and then where I would break theirs faster, and then I kind of didn't touch it after that. I didn't mess with it very much. I just kind of left those on there. Maybe, again, there's some really good stuff in there that makes a huge difference to your gameplay, but I didn't find any, and so it just wasn't much for me. So that was kind of a throwaway system, in my opinion. After all of that, what was the probably most surprising and impactful part of Jedi Survivor for me was the story. I enjoyed the story in Fallen Order quite a bit, but the emotional impact in Survivor was on a whole other level. The growth of the characters, the motivations that they come with, the growth of their relationships were all incredible. Several times throughout the game, I found myself deeply connected to the characters, what was happening to them. I wish I could go more in detail on some of these things, but I don't want to spoil or give anything away. Just know that they really upped the ante in their storytelling this time around. Phenomenal voice acting certainly helped. Those performances were very welcome, and the mostly incredible writing was no slouch either. Not to mention that at least 3 times during the course of my playthrough, Jedi Survivor had a set piece, which we'll get into in a little bit, or a story beat that put my jaw on the floor, my eyes to tears, or my voice to shouting. There were some lulls, of course, as there are with most stories, but the overarching plot line and the character arcs were something truly special, particularly in the case of the main protagonist, Cal Kestis. His growth as a character and his emotions and pain, his longing for something that he can't quite grasp, it was all so palpable, so believable, and even to some extent relatable. I remember enjoying him in Fallen Order, but I don't remember connecting with him very much. Survivor changed that, and I felt deeply connected to Cal as a character and what happened to him and his relationships with other people way more than I did in the first. It was very impactful for me. Now, those set pieces I mentioned, without showing you and ruining all of the coolest moments in the game, I'll just say this. Outside of Final Fantasy XVI, Jedi Survivor has the best epic moment set pieces that I have experienced in gaming. They were absolutely insane. When Cal is doing the coolest parkour Jedi stuff, and your friend is doing what they do, and the enemy is something huge, and the music is hitting, and the sounds are penetrating and vibrating, and you as the player feel your adrenaline pumping, you are hooked. Man, so good. There were moments in this game that just knock you over. They're so good. They're fun and epic and momentous. Amazing things that I just loved. And there was a like I said before, at least 3 of them throughout Jedi Survivor that are so memorable. They were incredible. Along with the Titan fight in Final Fantasy 16, the coolest boss fight was in Jedi Survivor. I think Titan probably still wins it, but this was really, really good. As I said before, I would absolutely love to go into all of the evidence to prove to you why the story and the set pieces and everything else is as good as I say it was. But if I ruin any of those moments for you, it would just totally suck. Do yourself a favor and try it. You can regularly find Jedi Survivor on sale for around $30. I highly recommend you pick it up. PS5 or Series X is probably the way to go, as I can't vouch for the performance on PC. But however you get it, give Jedi Survivor a try. I really hope that Respawn is going to make another one. I'm not sure if they are. Again, I won't go into anything like that. But as these 2 games have really climbed the ranks for me personally. But again, we'll just have to wait and see what happens. And that's going to do it for me. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure you hit that like button, as that helps me out a ton, especially with that almighty algorithm, right? If you're new around here, smash that subscribe button, stick around, have some fun with us. As always, thank you so much for watching, and good hunting.